The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started now. Thank you all for taking the time out of your schedules to be with us today. We're excited to have you here for the California Pest Issues Update. Just quickly, we want to acknowledge that you've been making adjustments to your business during this unprecedented time. Our commitment is to continue to support you with plant healthcare science and education that will help your organization continue to grow, even amidst the COVID-19 world that we're living in. Just a quick plug for this webinar in a couple of weeks. It's the last in our webinar series. Since I know that Dutch elm disease has been a hot topic out of California again lately, this is going to be a live field demo and is the second part of a series. If you missed the first part on Tuesday, the recording is on our website, so you could catch up on that and then join us for this portion on the 28th. All right, before I introduce myself, I want to acknowledge my colleague Matt Karst, who is manning the technology and the questions behind the scenes. So this is me. I'm Alison Herrell. I'm an arborologist with Rainbow Tree Care Scientific Advancements. I'm based here in Chicago, Illinois, but soon to be transitioning to the West Coast arborologist once the whole COVID thing blows through. I have a bachelor's in biology from Valparaiso University, a master's in environmental science from Indiana University School of Public and Environmental Affairs. Got about 10 years of experience in the industry, 6 of those with the tree care company, doing everything from drag and brush, climbing trees, plant health care applications, all the way to sales and working as a consulting arborist. I have been with Rainbow for a year as of yesterday, and my role here as an arborologist is focused on bringing research and development, so helping with research and development, and then helping to create science-backed protocols to bring predictable results to all of your clients. And I really specialize with doing hands-on field trainings. So now it's my honor to introduce our guest speaker today. This is Dr. Igor Lacan. He is a University of California Cooperative Extension advisor for the San Francisco Bay Area, specializing in urban forestry. His focus has been on trees and water, and he can speak more for himself too if I'm missing anything. But his research projects explore emerging issues in urban landscapes, such as optimizing tree growth in stormwater facilities, as well as contributing to mitigating long-standing problems such as wood decay and failure in urban trees, which we all know is a big problem. Much of his role involves producing extension and outreach materials that transfer the findings from the university to the practicing arborists like yourself. His academic training is a bachelor's in ecology, a master's in aquatic ecology, and a PhD in urban forestry, all from the prestigious University of California, Berkeley. So just quickly, housekeeping items. Here at Rainbow, we're committed to safety always. So I know we're most likely at our homes or our offices, but please do a safety brief for your surroundings, identify any potential hazards. If you are driving, please make sure that you are hands-free or pulled over, ideally. If you're dealing with inclement weather, like I am here in Chicago, severe thunderstorms, take care of yourselves first. This will be recorded and sent out. And then we'll do questions at the end. So if you want to take a look at your screen, there's a little box, little chat box. You can just enter your questions there, and then Matt will queue them up for us at the end. For CEUs, you should have been able to enter your ISA number when you registered, but if you did not, please chat us your ISA number so we can make sure you get the credits. And with that, let's get started. So I'll transfer this over to you.
Okay. Good afternoon. Can everybody see the screen?
I can see it, so I think
we'll go with, Alison, we'll go with you. Wow, there's these metrics on here. This is amazing. Okay, so thank you for being here. I'm going to review a few of our fun time pests that we deal with across California. And just a reminder that all the good things come from somebody other than me. So the names are up there, and I will introduce the folks who contributed as we go through. But so if you have questions, the better people to ask will be listed, better than me. So here's what we have on the menu today. We have 7 pests, so we'll run through this fairly quickly. Plum Bud Mite, Boxwood Blight, a couple of beetles, 3 of them. We'll review some of the new and some of the old Phytophthora, and then we'll just briefly touch on the Asian citrus Psyllid, which is now a problem pretty much across California. I am limited in my understanding, well, I'm very limited, but in this specific case, I'm talking about California problems. So some other places will be different. So let's get started. Oops. There we go. Plum Bud Gall Mite is our first pest friend, and the person to contact about this would be my colleague Aparna Gazula in Santa Clara County, who was one of the first people to notice this pest. And if you look at that picture on the screen, you can see these galls right where the last year's buds were. So now where the twigs are coming out, you see these bumps and galls, and that was new for last year, 2019. It showed up in the Bay Area, mostly Santa Clara County, a little bit in San Mateo County, and then somewhat in Alameda County as well. But there's no reason to think it won't spread. So be on the lookout for this. Now, this is not a new pest in the world. It's actually been around for a while in Europe and the Middle East. It's been reported on the genus Prunus and Cotoneaster, and in fact, almonds, apricots, peach plums, so a bunch of commercially important tree crops. In California, so here, it's really only been seen on plums and pluots, okay? But again, rest of the world on these other prunus crops. And the thing you're seeing here, and if we look at this picture in a little bit more detail, you can see the gall itself, and that's the mites are inside the gall. Now, the symptoms you're going to see on the tree can range from absolutely nothing to the death of the tree. So the symptoms and the severity is very, very host dependent. Some trees seem to be affected more than others, and then some species seem to be affected more than others. In fact, because this has been around for a while, there are some cultivars that are completely resistant to this. And in other cases, trees are known to have recovered. So they've been infected, they recovered later on. The mite you're dealing with, I'm not showing you the mite because you're not going to see it. It's inside the gall. Each gall contains a couple of thousand of these mites. They're tiny, tiny areophyid mites, which normally cause plant galls that we don't worry about. So if you look up areophyid mite, you get these pictures of things that look like they're from outer space, but we don't really worry about them typically because the damage is just not that severe. This is a new thing, and we're not sure, quite frankly, where the damage is going to end up on the spectrum. So it's worth keeping an eye out. If you cut open this gall, you're going to see tiny off-white specks moving around. And if you stick it under a microscope, then you'll see a tiny off-white speck with maybe some legs on it. But again, they really are very, very small. They are microscopic mites. You're not going to see the individual mites. You'll see the galls. The way they work, by the way, the galls crack open in spring, the mites spread around, lay eggs, feed, form new galls. There's probably several generations during that time, but they just keep multiplying, and by the end of the fall, you have a few thousand individuals in the gall. So what do we recommend for treatment at this point? Again, this is based mostly on what's been learned in Europe and the Middle East rather than anything that we really have had much experience with here. For homeowners, prune the affected limbs, double bag them, solarize them so they die, and then throw them away. Or for chemical applications, sulfur is available for homeowners. You have to achieve very, very good coverage, and you have to do it repeatedly. For professionals, in either case, you're really looking to spray in the spring at the time of those galls being formed, because that's when the individuals are dispersing. Once they're inside the gall, things get a lot more difficult. So again, sulfur, it is effective, but you're looking at basically weekly application for 2 months. So again, if your client doesn't want anything other than quote unquote natural materials, then this is one of your options. Carbaryl, again, has been shown effective elsewhere with a single application. I'm not going to comment on what I think of Carbaryl, but I will just say that any synthetic pesticide that's older than I am, you might want to think twice whether that's really good chemistry, but so it goes. There is some information about it on the IPM aerified mite page, but again, this is different in that it may cause damage, whereas other aerified mites we really don't care too much about. And the final thing is, this is one of those pests that's still brand new to California, so it's worth reporting the fines to your ag commissioner's office, simply because we're trying to still figure out how far this is going to spread. As you can imagine, folks in the Central Valley, commercial orchard advisors and orchard owners are a little bit concerned about this because it can affect production agriculture. In ornamental settings, I think it remains to be seen how big of a problem it'll be, but it's definitely here. So Plum Bud Gall Mite and my colleague Aparna Gazula, UC Cooperative Extension, Santa Clara County. Moving along from an insect to disease, boxwood blight, Calonectria. And here we have our two experts, Kathy Costa, retired from California Department of Food and Agriculture, and Bruce Ward, who is at Bartlett. And I'm stressing these two folks because when we get to the end of this pest, we really want to think about how it differs from what's happening in the East. This is also not a new pest. It's well established in the Eastern United States. It is one of the many things that affect boxwood, but this one is really contagious. This one has large, sticky, resistant spores that will stick to leaves, plant parts, plant debris, soil, your shoes, your tools, your pants, and anything else they touch. And then they will be spread like that. Now, it was first found in San Mateo County, where some of the richest people on earth live. And so you can imagine when their boxwood went bad, money was no object. And they figured it out. So again, this is not a new pest, well established in the eastern US. We're really mostly worried about the genus Buxus, so boxwood, and Pachysandra. That's really kind of where we're going to see this. And what you're looking for is you're looking for vertical streaks, black vertical streaks on the twigs, and you're looking for extensive defoliation, so the leaves just fall right off. I stress this because boxwood gets sick in all kinds of ways. There's all kinds of stuff that affects boxwood, but none of it has that combination of those two symptoms. And here's what I mean. You've got Volutella, you've got Phloecoptes, you have this thing called winter browning, which is an abiotic problem. But in all of those cases, the leaves will cling to the little twigs, and you can actually see this, right? The tops will still have leaves on them. For boxwood blight, the leaves will fall right off, and you will be able to see those black streaks, black cankers on the twigs. What to do? Well, what we know is that it's very contagious. So if you have it and you have it lab confirmed, the thing to do really is to bring a bag, put a bag over that infected plant, and then dig the whole thing up. Do not drag the infected plant around. Don't just casually put it in your green waste. Really be careful with it because you will spread the disease across the landscape, which is not what you want. But the thing to remember, and this is really what our friends Kathy and Drew have pointed out to me, is that it's a different situation here in the West. This disease needs warm and humid conditions. So now think about that. How often do we have that in California? Well, this year, never apparently, but it's just not that common. So what is a deadly disease in the East is a manageable one, or appears to be a manageable one here out West. It can be treated. There are also species and cultivars that are resistant to a greater or lesser degree. And so this is not quite the giant problem out here that it is in the East. But I would argue if you are managing someone's boxwood, or you're replacing someone's boxwood, or you're thinking of replacing someone's boxwood, go ahead and use one of those resistant cultivars. There's really no reason to use a susceptible cultivar at this point. There are resistant options that are on the market. And the other thing, and those you will find all over online, then that's fine. You will also find a bunch of other information online that's correct, it's not wrong, but again, it's mainly geared toward the Eastern US, where the climate is different enough in this case to make a difference. So don't think of this as a complete catastrophe the way it has been in the East. Just do be aware it is still a very contagious disease. So it will mostly be best practices to contain its spread. And then there is chemical options for treatment as well. So that's boxwood blight, again, mostly on boxwood and pachysandra. And our experts here are CDFA folks, Kathy Costa and colleagues, and Drew Zwart from Bartlett. So boxwood blight. Moving right along to gold spotted oak borer. So we're back in the insect world, and our two experts here are Dr. Stacey Shinuma from U.S. Forest Service and our southern forest pest expert at Cal Fire, Kim Corella. Now, gold spot oak borer is one of those things that, if you have it, you know you have it and you're concerned about it. If you don't have it, you're right about now bored and are wondering why you signed up for this. And I'm here to tell you, I don't see any reason why we up north or anybody else really wouldn't get this pest. So just that's why we're covering this. Because if you don't have it, hold on, give it a few years. Gold spot oak borers are members of the buprestid family. Buprestids are jewel beetles because some of them are really shiny and beautiful. They're also called flat-headed borers, and that'll become important in a moment. And easy to recognize symptom that the exit holes that the larvae makes are shaped like a letter D, because they have a flat head. Not really, but just go with it. Buprestids in general are fairly aggressive pests. They're able to attack trees fairly solidly, even trees that are not stressed, and they're able to kill trees. And so this dude showed up sometime in the 1990s. It came from Arizona, where it doesn't cause a problem, and it came on firewood. Now, how do we know that? Because it showed up in campgrounds. So either this insect, unlike most other insects, likes to go camping, or somebody saved $5 by getting free firewood from their buddy in Arizona. That's how we got this insect. That's how it continues to move. And these are two experts, Stacy and Kim, will show you maps that you can see this insect jumping from one location to another. Again, either it grew superpowers or somebody is saving $5 moving infested firewood. There are no quarantines, so it'll continue to move. The damaging stage is the larvae. They feed under the bark. They destroy enough of the cambium that the tree eventually succumbs and dies. Adults will come out and mate. The entire life cycle is completed within 1 year, which is both good and bad, and we'll see why that is in a minute, but it's a fairly fast-acting pest. It takes a few years typically for the insect to overwhelm a tree. Here is the locations. The ZOI are zones of infestation, so it's still a Southern California problem with most of the mortality contained in eastern San Diego County. But again, make no mistake, this insect travels very well on firewood. This is what you're looking for. You are looking for V-shaped exit holes. Notice the size of the finger. It's a regular human finger. So these are not super tiny. They are insects that you would notice if you're looking for them. And I make that distinction as we go on. We'll see some really tiny insects. This is not it. This is something that's quite visible. Again, shaped like a letter D, flat-headed borer, typically a bad sign. And here's the mortality, really quite significant in the eastern San Diego County, and the infestation rates can be very high. It probably isn't, the actual mortality rate is probably not quite as high over time, but at introduction can be quite high. So when they move into a new area, the susceptible trees probably get hit first, and those trees die. And they affect, so what do they affect? They affect the California black oak and coast live oak, to a much lesser extent canyon live oak and Engelmann oak. But those two, the black oak and the live oak, those are some of our major forest trees and landscape trees. So at the moment, the damage is mostly in forests and sort of peri-urban areas. I don't see any reason why this insect won't eventually move into our urban landscapes. And again, this is one of those where prevention is really much better than trying to manage it. Here's the life cycle. And by the way, this insect has its own website, and you know you've made it as a pest when you have your own website. So it's gsob.org. And you can see that the majority of damage takes place in the summer. That's when larvae feed. The adults emerge in the spring, mate, lay eggs, and so on. And then the pupae overwinter. So the insect will overwinter in the tree as a pupa. All of this is somewhat important because when they're in the tree, they're much more difficult to get with insecticides. So if you're applying systemics, you're trying to get them in that pupal stage when they're inside the tree and the tree is actively moving water around. Whereas if you're applying contact insecticides, you really have to get them when they're out there mating and laying eggs, because otherwise it's going to be, contact insecticide is not going to be effective. There's a couple of other ways to manage this insect, and I would argue that you need all of these things. So it's really about trying to suppress the insects that are doing damage, but it's also trying to manage the infested wood. You can grind the wood, or again, because the insect takes 1 year to complete its life cycle, if you cover the wood with a tarp, you really only need to keep it covered during the hot summer months, and that'll be enough for those insects to complete their life cycle on that dead wood, emerge, die, and then that wood is safe. So again, that's maybe a good thing. This is what that looks like. So you can certainly grind up the trees, which is what they're mostly doing. You can season the wood. This is a little bit tricky in that the wood needs to be cut up into fairly small chunks. If you leave a giant log sitting out there, it won't get hot enough to actually kill the insects. Small chunks will warm up in the sun and the insects will die. You can debark them. That's very effective, but it's also very labor intensive. And you can certainly tarp or screen these logs, and that's very, very effective as long as it's done well, meaning there's no giant holes through which these insects can escape. And I'll show you an example. So here's this is actually, this slide shows two things that I want you to think about. One is, if you look at the map, if you are near a zone of infestation, I think you can expect this insect. This is a very simple way that they spread outward from the infested zone. So if you're near a zone of infestation, expect them. And then if you want to see how to manage downed wood, here's a good example of very large logs being tarped, in this case with metal screen. And this works. It really works because, again, within a few months, these insects will have completed their life cycle. The tarp will stop them from emerging and they will die. But again, you do want good coverage on the tarp. So that's the gold-spotted oak borer. Please don't do this. Please let your clients know not to do this, because they'll save them $5 on firewood, and then they'll have to call you over and over and over again. And although you love your clients, you do want them to do the right thing. So remind them to not save $5 by moving firewood. And again, gold-spotted oak borer, gsov.org, Stacy Hishinuma, and Kim Corella. Okay, so we're almost halfway the way there. Let's look at the walnut twig beetle and the 1,000 cankers. And I put this in really mostly as a tribute to Steve Seibold, who was one of our great entomologists focusing on tiny, tiny beetles. And Steve died last year, and it's a pretty huge loss. So this is one of those diseases that's really widespread across California, and most people don't know they have it. But it's a disease spread by these tiny, tiny, tiny walnut twig beetles. The host trees are walnuts. Now, they do affect the edible walnut, but they mostly affect the two native species in California. Right? There are two native species, the Northern California walnut and Southern California walnut. Both are very badly affected by this beetle and this disease. This beetle is called a twig beetle, but it's not confined to twigs. It will affect large branches and eventually even the trunk. It has a couple of generations per year, and then there are two flight peaks in early, sort of late spring, early summer, and then again in the fall. There it is in the upper left-hand corner. It's tiny, and so the holes it makes are also really, really tiny. That's a regular-sized pencil. It's not a giant pencil. And if you're not looking closely, you're going to miss them. So if you're looking for this beetle, you would focus on small branches, so something the size of your thumb, right about there, maybe a little bigger. Again, you don't have to go for like tiny twigs. Branches, small branches. And look for these tiny holes. If you see them, then go ahead and scrape off the bark, because the cankers are really easy to see. So that's the 1,000 cankers disease. Geosmithia, it's a fungus, and those are really easy to see. And what's going to happen over time, if it's a susceptible tree, and again, both of our native species are really susceptible, these cankers will girdle the twigs and eventually cause a dieback and death of the tree. Not all trees die, but a lot of trees get hit quite badly, and here's what that looks like and decline. And I have to be careful how I say this because I see the webinar is recorded, but the edible walnut, so the cultivated walnut, is not as badly affected. So there's not that much interest from the commercial industry in trying to control this problem. So it's really back to us in trying to not move infected walnut wood. And by the way, the folks back east are really concerned about this because the eastern black walnut is super susceptible. And for once, there's a pest that's moving from west to east. It's actually moving from California, from the west coast to the east. Again, how does it move? On wood. So don't move wood. There are options for managing infested wood. In this case, you have to season the wood. So if you're going to remove infested oak, if you can leave the wood on site for a year or two, that's your ideal option because these are really tiny beetles. They're not going to fly long distance. So if you can just leave it there, that's great. If you want to actually use the wood and want to move the wood, you have to steam heat it or just heat the wood to kill the beetles. Do not move walnut wood around or else we're really, well, we're already in trouble. The eastern US is in trouble. And yes, there are systemic insecticides that are now being tested for high value trees. But I think the main thing with this is to recognize it, because whenever I talk to people, they're not really aware that there is a disease of native walnuts, and it turns out there is. So 1000 cankers disease, again, Stacy Hishinuma might be able to help, since unfortunately we've lost Steve. And there is some information on the UCIPM website. Again, if you can't see the holes or if you're not sure about the holes, just scrape off the bark. If it is one of these, you will see the canker under the bark quite easily. Okay, so we go from very small to quite big. Where are my beetles? Now, if you miss this, then you're really not paying attention. This is the South American palm weevil, and it's the two gentlemen named Hoddle, Mark Hoddle and Don Hodell, both in Southern California, my colleagues in Southern California. I think Alison will cover this in more detail, but these beetles are very large, very obvious, and very voracious. So this is in Southern California, mostly San Diego area. I don't think they've made it much past that. But again, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. They attack the Canary Island date palm, but it can also attack the edible date palm. So in this case, the commercial date industry is very interested in not having these insects spread around. And you can see you can actually see the beginning and the end stage of the infestation on this slide. The insert with the leaves that are sort of clipped or notched, that can often be your first symptom that there's something going on with that palm. And what's happening is the larvae of this insect, and the larvae are big, they're like shrimp size, right? They are actually in the heart of palm, eating that apical meristem and damaging the new leaves. And so when the new leaf unfolds, it has like a notch where the insect took a bite out of it, basically, while it was still folded up. And then in the larger picture, you see what eventually happens. The palm dies and just sort of folds up. And what has happened is that the entire apical meristem, the heart of palm, has been turned into mush because these beetles have chewed it up. Of course, they poop right there, right? Because they're all there. And there's many of them, dozens, hundreds sometimes, and they're, again, large beetles. So it's just disgusting all over. It's just horrible. This is the signs. This is the signs and symptoms of infestation, and there's great information on the UC Riverside website, and I put that website up there. But you're basically looking for holes in leaves or leaf bases. Again, this is simply where the larvae had just chewed right through. If you then open up one of these palms, you will find the beetles themselves. They are right in there. And again, you're looking for something fairly big, right? This is, my finger. That's kind of a big guy. And then the adults will come, the adults will spin a cocoon of palm fibers and eventually emerge right out of it, which I would imagine would be really cool for kids or Halloween or something, but it's devastating because the palms will die. And this is really what I want to stress here. If you're in San Diego, you're dealing with this, you know more about this than I'm telling you. But if you're not in San Diego, then are you inspecting the palms that you're having delivered to your location? Because these folks will hitch a ride on a palm. And once they're delivered to your location, I again don't see any reason why this insect would not get much better established across at least southern half California, but I would not be surprised if it established itself here in the Bay Area as well. They can fly up to 40 kilometers a day. Now, hopefully they don't, and I think they haven't in the wild done that quite yet. But if you want to see something really funny, go to that UC Riverside website and you will see a demonstration of a flight mill, which is like a treadmill, except for beetles. It's hilarious. But what it showed is that these beetles are actually capable of flying long distances. If it can fly 25 miles a day, that's not a good sign. So again, if you're getting palms delivered, definitely inspect them. These are not tiny or inconspicuous. They are easily seen. So please have a good look. And if you are in San Diego, please go to the UC Riverside webpage and have a look at the detailed management instructions. So South American palm weevil. And again, important not to confuse it with the red palm weevil, which we had for a moment in Long Beach, but that infestation was actually snuffed out. It was one of the few examples. This is a different insect, much more damaging, and it seems to have established itself. So this will be with us. Okay, final stretch, two things to talk about, Phytophthorus and then Huanglongbing. So Phytophthorus, I want to be very brief about this, but I want you to look at that cartoon that's actually from Kathy Costa, and it's one of those things where Phytophthorus, very often we put ourselves in a bad situation or in a situation where a bad outcome is possible, and then we're just shocked when something bad happens. Who would have thought? I mean, my goodness, what's happening here? This is what's happening. What's happening is that we're using contaminated plant material. And the specific example I want to talk about is Phytophthora on native plants that are used for restoration, but really the lesson here applies to ornamental plants of any kind and to trees. And the lesson is that in a lot of plants, Phytophthora, which is a whole group of pathogens, right? So Phytophthora includes many species of what are called water molds. So it's not really a fungus, not really a bacterium. It's kind of related to algae, oddly enough. But it kills plants quite effectively by destroying their roots. So if you look at that dead plant on the right, you can see there's just about no fine roots left. And remember, any plant, giant oak to a little tiny grass plant, what's doing the work as far as roots go is the tiny little white roots that only last a few weeks, maybe only a couple of weeks, but they're doing the work of water intake. So if you kill those roots, the plant will die. Sooner or later, the plant will die. Now, it's been a particular problem in native plants because they are drought tolerant. And so when something kills the fine roots and the plant essentially can't take up water, it's like it's in a drought. Well, native plants just don't show it for a while. They're kind of tough that way, but they're infected. And when you outplant them, when you use them in your landscape, now you've infected the landscape. And that's where things really go sideways, because people will say, well, I've got this guarantee, the contractor will replace the plant, this and that. Well, sure, but your site is now infected. So you will now have to manage this problem long term. Again, here's an excellent example of two plants where they're both infected. One of them has no roots left, so it's pretty obvious, well, there's a problem. The other one, the roots are beginning to die back, but there are no obvious symptoms yet. So what to do? Well, you can certainly test the soil. There is a procedure which is a little complex. If you want to know what it is, put into Google pear test, pears, like pear fruit, pear test for Phytophthora. But there is a simpler way of doing this, a simpler way of thinking about it, which is that you simply quarantine your new plants. I know people don't like doing this because it messes up with their schedule and makes things more complicated. But again, if you are dealing with a new supplier or just a really high value landscape, this is worth doing. Why? Because plants will often be treated in the nursery with chemicals that suppress Phytophthora. Notice they don't cure Phytophthora, they suppress it. That's perfectly reasonable for a nursery situation. I'm not going to go into that whole debate, but I'm saying as a landscaper or arborist, you have to think of the possibility that that plant you bought actually could be infected with Phytophthora. It'll just take a few weeks for the treatment to wear off and for the plant to express symptoms, right? So if you have a situation where you're concerned about this, the thing to do is to simply buy the plant and then let it sit somewhere in the lowest spot in your landscape for a few weeks. Why the lowest spot? Because Phytophthora moves in water. Phytophthora are water-borne pathogens. There's one exception, and I know people are like, oh, no, there's an exception. The exception is sudden oak death, which is thought to move through air as well. But for pretty much all other Phytophoras I've heard of, they move in water. So they will move, of course, on plant material, they'll move through soil, but one way they move through landscapes is through irrigation water. So if you have the plants you want to quarantine, just make sure that water that when you water them that drains out is not draining across the rest of your landscape. That's why I say put them in the lowest spot in your landscape so you sort of contain the drain water. So lots more information on Cal Phytos, and I really should have put that in there, but it's, if you just look for California Phytophthora, it'll come right up. It's a website specifically designated for Phytophthora in these native plants. And we use a lot of native plants now in ornamental horticulture. So it's worth at least being aware of what's going on. And of course, suddenoakdeath.org, that's actually the linked website, that will get you started on Phytophthora. The thing about Phytophthora, just one last thought. Those of you who are in Southern California, you're saying, nah, this sudden oak, that stuff, we don't have any of that. That's fine. Just remember that Phytophthora are currently ravaging Australia, which is kind of hot and dry. So the idea that Phytophthora only show up in moist places is totally wrong. They show up in warm, hot, dry places, and some of our native plants that are adapted to that are really susceptible to Phytophthora. So just something to think about. Again, if you have trouble finding this information, just reach back out. Just reach out to me and I'll help you find the info because it's out there. The information is definitely out there. And it's, again, some basic ideas. Don't reuse suspect soil, clean your pots, clean your tools. Phytophthora are not terribly hardy. They will die fairly quickly if the soil's heated. So if you need to use steam sterilization, you can. It's actually fairly easy, but it's much easier to just start with the clean plants and clean soil. Okay, and the final thing, Asian citrus greening or Huanglongbing, or sorry, Asian citrus psyllid and the citrus greening disease or Huanglongbing. Well, the bad news is that we now have the psyllid pretty much everywhere where it was gonna go. So it's right across California, wherever citrus is grown. The disease is still limited to Southern California. So this is not very difficult. It's a psyllid, which is this thing that looks kind of like a plant hopper or leaf hopper. They're related to aphids. They're the same insect family, hemipterans. And they transmit this greening disease. The psyllid itself is mostly a nuisance. Nobody really cares that much about him. It's that he vectors that lethal disease. In order, because there's no cure for the disease, the only way at the moment to manage the spread of the disease is to suppress its vector. Now, I think people are a lot more interested in diseases as of late than they used to be. So this is, I think, kind of people are more receptive to this message. But here's what's going on. We have quarantines for the insect pretty much across the state. That's in blue. We have the quarantine for the disease in Southern California, And the quarantines restrict plant movement. So if you are not sure about this, simply ask your nursery whether they need to be, which quarantine zone they're in, and whether they've complied with quarantine. All respectable nurseries will be able to answer that question right away and will tell you what they've done. If you're buying your trees from the back of a truck from some guy named Igor, then that's a problem. I would argue you might want to advise your clients, if you're an arborist, if you're a landscaper, you might want to advise your clients about this, because if you're planting citrus in California today as an ornamental plant in your yard, you're really committing yourself to managing this psyllid from now until they find a cure or resistant variety or something for the disease. Because the disease, when it gets to your tree, will kill your tree, number one. And number two, your tree will then serve to infect other trees nearby. So planting citrus in California today is a little bit tricky. I don't want to say don't do it, because I've had people like throw their shoes at me when I said that. But you just realize that, you know, deadly disease, no cure, spread by an insect. So you're planting a susceptible plant, you're really committing to managing that insect. The insect is not that difficult to manage. It's susceptible to all kinds of things, from organic materials to systemics, but you are looking at managing the insect, which really 10 years ago, if you planted citrus in your yard, there was pretty much nothing that you had to worry about. And that has fundamentally changed. I mean, you know, we didn't worry about going to a restaurant 3 months ago, and, you know, we do now. So things can change quickly. Again, it's interesting how things go. But this is a big deal. This disease devastated Florida citrus industry, devastated Brazil citrus industry. And it actually contributed to the higher price of orange juice, especially. And in California, we've avoided the worst of that as of yet, but it's still early in the game. A couple of things. One is that it's really easy to distinguish this psyllid from other psyllids on citrus. So again, we're talking about citrus, right? If you need help, there is a pest note on the Asian citrus psyllid on the UCIPM webpage, and it will give you the pictures of other psyllids. There's nothing else that looks like the Asian citrus psyllid, so that's easy. And then, again, we're worried about the psyllid not because of itself, but because of the disease, Huanglongbing. It's a bacterial disease that kills orange trees. It actually kills all citrus. Some citrus are more susceptible than others, but all are susceptible. And again, once your tree is infected, there's no real treatment. There have been some things tried out, but as of now, there's nothing that really works reliably. A couple of apps. There's an app for residents, the HLB app, and that helps residents in Southern California estimate their risk of Huanglongbing and then suggest steps to take. So if you're working in Southern California, I would highly recommend this, because it'll help you communicate with your client. Look, this is not just me saying stuff so I can, you know, sell you services. It's a big deal. It's a big problem. And then if you're working with a commercial grower, it's the HLB Grower app that helps citrus growers estimate their risk. Growers have a separate set of management strategies that I'm not going to go into, because I think I'm talking mostly to arborists. But again, be aware, if you're close to a grower, this is something you might want to check out as well. It's really area-wide control that they're relying on. And I think that's it. We have the bonus on this picture, the giant whitefly, but I will leave that for another time. Yeah, and I don't know, how do I see the questions? Are there any questions, or is there anything else?
So I'm going to go into a brief high-level overview, and then we'll take questions. But
Great.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That was great information. All right. Everyone can see my screen, I hope. All right. So like I said, I'm just going to move into a high-level overview of some of the management strategies out there, especially as it pertains to our private and commercial clients, those of us who are more like arborist and landscape types. So first and foremost, integrated pest management really means using a toolbox approach. Plant healthcare is as we know, a comprehensive program for managing the health, the appearance, the structure, the vitality of all of our plants in the landscape. So that all has to occur within the expectations that are set with our clients. So we always have to keep in mind their personal priorities as well as their budgets in mind. So sometimes that does mean picking and choosing what you're treating for and what types of applications can be done. You guys have all dealt with this, but every client will have a different acceptable threshold for different pests. So basically, the summary of this slide, IPM is one component of managing health of trees, which requires proper diagnosis, careful consideration of management options, and determining what those management strategies should be. Dr. Lacan talked a lot about the cultural practices out there that you can use for these specific pests. But just a reminder that there are general steps that you can also be taking to improve the overall vitality of your trees, regardless of the pest issues or not. Obviously, sometimes this will not help your trees. If this, if the specific pest goes after healthy trees, it doesn't matter how healthy it is, but some of them are pests of opportunity, and in which case we want to make sure that we are using these cultural practices. So proper watering, pruning, mulching, reducing soil compaction and girdling roots with an air spade if applicable, prescription fertilizer, and then quickly I will just say Cambistat. Cambistat paclobutrazol is a growth regulator that many of our urban trees, we utilize this tool and they can benefit from. It slows down shoot growth, but it also has the potential to increase root mass, thicken the leaf cuticle and the trichome hairs, which does improve drought resistance of our trees and improve overall disease resistance. And just high level, quickly, briefly touching on the application techniques, let's remember that it's not always a one size fits all for treatment applications. We've got our systemic applications. Those can be using micro or macro injections. That depends on, what type of pest you're dealing with or pathogen. Soil applications by either a drench or an injection, basal bark sprays, and then on the right, we've got our non-systemic. Those are our foliar or trunk and limb sprays. And each of these tools has pros and cons. For example, injection, sometimes they are the only specific way to manage a specific problem due to the biology or the pathogen. Or potentially the tree is near a sensitive habitat, so you can't do any sort of spray or foliar application. But then you have to keep in mind that every time you drill a tree, that tree needs to compartmentalize that wound. Soil drenches, they don't require much equipment, they're fast, so that's great. But in a soil injection with a fancy probe may look more professional from a client perspective. Bark sprays are super fast and easy to apply. Contact sprays are very quick to act, but some people don't want sprays. So just lots of things to consider, and I do want you to keep that in mind. Always here at Rainbow, especially, we're always very concerned about using this toolbox approach. All right, so into the specific management, it'll literally just be like a few points on each of these. So Plum Bud Gall Mite, it's important to re-note that this is an aerophyid mite. Typically with these types of mites, smaller populations can be kept in check by predatory mite populations. And Dr. Lacan went through a lot of the cultural management of pruning and solarization. And he also mentioned sulfur and carbaryl as some of the spray options. Those are more of our organic spray options, but then we do have a couple of conventional options that can work as well that I just want to bring up quickly. Lucid, this is our abamectin product. Foliar applications while the mites are active in that spring time period is really, really effective on aerophyid mites. But just keep in mind, you cannot consume those. So if you're talking about plums or pluots that you want to eat, you can't use that. But for an ornamental situation, that's going to give you great control. And then the other option would be an annual mectinite trunk injection a few weeks before emergence of those major mite populations. And that's just a great opportunity if a spray is not an option for you. Boxwood blight, we heard about the importance of all the cultural things associated with sanitation to prevent the spread. And it's important to note here, this is a fungal pathogen. We do have protocols that work for this, even in the East where it is really bad. And, Dr. Lacan said not quite as bad on the West Coast. We do have applications that work. It's just that it's really persistent, especially in the East. So I'll just bring this up quickly, and then we'll have to make slight adjustments to talk about how it pertains to California. Basically, we get great control doing foliar applications using a systemic fungicide such as propiconazole or myclobutanol, plus a protectant fungicide such as chlorothalonol or trifloxystrobin. And then the issue, especially on the East Coast, is that you're basically spraying every 2 to 3 weeks anytime it's above 65 degrees and has a certain amount of humidity. So the protocol that we actually developed in conjunction with North Carolina Extension Agency is about a program of about 15 annual sprays. So essentially you're doing a foliar spray every couple of weeks for the entire year. So while this isn't something we necessarily recommend from an ecological standpoint, we all know that there are those clients out there who are just, like Dr. Lacan said, the richest people who are like, oh, my boxwoods, right? So we do have to keep in mind that this is an opportunity if needed. And then to his point, this could be less since it's more easily managed due to the different climate where you guys are. And hopefully we will have more information as we work with Drew at Bartlett to come up with those more refined protocols for you. Okay, gold spotted oak borer. I know that Dr. Lacan posted his little sort of chart as well. He noted that you could do a contact application in May, which I don't have on this table, but just want to highlight there's a lot of preventative systemic options out there for gold spotted oak borer. The important part of managing this pest is to get peak amounts of insecticide into the tree when the insect populations are peaking. So you'll kind of notice on this, annual soil injections of Zytect in early spring, that is, or you could even do it a little bit earlier, as one of his charts showed, December, January, because that product does take quite a while to build active ingredient in the tree. But when you're talking about some of these faster acting, so Mectinite or Zytect 10%, those are applied as a trunk injection. Those only take a couple of weeks to really build into the tree. So you could be doing those treatments a little bit closer to when the insect peaks. And then same with Transtec, that is a highly water soluble product that we have, and that gets taken up into the tree really quickly as well. So if people were calling you more as like a, oh no, I'm worried about this, and you just wanted to get something in there quickly, you wouldn't be too late. If you guys have questions more on that, let me know. But again, I just want to highlight using the toolbox approach and choosing the correct tool for the specific situation. Walnut twig beetle. So like we said, we're still doing research on chemicals to manage this pest. The wood sanitation is really, really necessary to keep things managed. And it is the beetle that vectors thousand cankers disease. So what we do know though is that based on its life cycle and the fact that it does feed on the phloem, mectinite and mectinbenzoate should work for a year of suppression. We're still working to find out details on rates to see if we could get more than 1 year of control. And then also important to note that there is also anecdotal evidence out there that contact trunk and limb sprays might be able to suppress the beetle for high value trees. And then as I said, the other issue associated with this beetle is that it does vector thousand canker, which right now has no known management protocol. Rainbow actually did some research in Colorado with a few different products, but we didn't get any noticeable results or notable results. So as of now, no research or industry standard, but it also hasn't been a prolific landscape problem yet, but it does behoove us to try and manage the twig beetle if you have value, high value trees with some of your clients. Okay, South American palm weevil. As we saw, this is like a pretty gross and obvious pest, and I really need to get on that website and look at those weevil treadmills that you were talking about. But anyway, sanitation is crucial to the management of the South American palm weevil. You need to remove and destroy those affected palms. And we actually have a really strong management protocol around this. So the goal here is also to maintain palm health as best as possible. So avoiding wounding trees because weevils are attracted to the fresh, moist tissue from those pruning wounds. If you must prune, try to confine this activity through the quote winter, which, you know, we all know that's an interesting word to use for Southern California, but, you know, winter-ish, and then treat the prune area with a foliar application of Transtect. Additionally, another protocol that's kind of out there is treating those wounds with a Talaris T-methyl fungicide to prevent pink rot, and then also the sanitization of tools to prevent the spread of Fusarium wilt. So it's like a really multifaceted thing. If you don't have to prune, please don't. But if you do, there's quite a few things that ideally we should try to address. But then as far as actual treatments for South American palm weevil, we have really good trial data. So expected results, really, really good if you're doing this as a preventative. So doing a dual application of Transtect and Zytect when applied before the signs of the weevil attack, we get great results. So retreatment at 6 to 12 months is required. We are still working to hone in that window because I realize 6 to 12 months is pretty long. But then, like I mentioned, the foliar application of Transtect after the pruning, or potentially when insects are active. So if you were unable to treat before the signs of the weevil, you could do a treatment to knock them back and then do that application, the dual application. All right. Phytophthora, thank you, Igor, for the California nursery specific take on things. Really good advice on the quarantining. You highlighted a couple of different types of Phytophtheras. I think I am most on alert for Phytophthora because of the sudden oak death pathogen. And we all know it's been making rounds on the news. I think it was last year, Walmart sent all those rhododendrons that were carrying this Phytophthora around the country last year. So as we know, with all of our Phytophthora, sanitation and disposal of those nursery plants is crucial to eliminate the spread. But as far as treatments go, as they pertain to our larger trees, studies have shown good results with many different types of Phytophtheras using agrifos. That's phosphorus acid. And that mostly works on the canker stage, suppressing things. So trying to keep those more high value trees from dying of Phytophthora. But again, there's a ton of more information on the websites that Dr. Lacan pointed you to. And then last but not least, Asian citrus psyllid. Again, the cultural practice removing infected trees and restricting plant movement is important because, as we reiterate, the psyllids vector the Huanglongbing pathogen, and that is what is lethal to citrus trees. So controlling the psyllids is the only tool that we have right now. And luckily, they are relatively easy to manage, just as we already heard. I think for me, the only complication comes with the edible factor. So you can use organic options like horticultural oils or insecticidal soaps, but the problem with those more organic options is they do not persist. So some of the extension website information really says you may need to be spraying as often as 2 to 3 times a week, which that's a pretty big undertaking for, you know, a citrus tree in your yard. Conventional pesticides do persist much longer, so like weeks to months. So soil applications of things such as Zytect or Transtect can work on a roughly like 6 to 12 month basis. But the issue with this is you have to wait a full year to eat the fruit. So if you're persistently treating, you're not going to be able to consume those citruses. But if the goal is just to keep the tree alive, it's a homeowner that's got a nice tree, they just want to keep it, they don't care about eating the citrus, this is a totally viable option. It's relatively low maintenance, so you're not spraying like every single day. And then Zytect, this is our conventional pesticide that is registered for psyllid as a foliar application. And that is more like a 2 to 3 week interval. So rather than every 2 or 3 days, every 2 or 3 weeks, which is more reasonable. And then with that label, there is a 7-day wait period for harvest and consumption. So kind of a middle ground, you could still eat, not be treating quite as often. But again, toolbox approach, each situation is going to be a little bit different, and we'll answer questions as you have them on that. So with that, please check out our website for support materials that we offer. a reminder that we are here to serve you, so please reach out to us with your diagnostic, product, equipment, or ordering questions. We've got a full tech support team to help you. You can even text us. And then with that, I will open this to questions. My contact information and your territory manager, Brian Bruce's information, is also on there, and he's based out of SoCal.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alison and Dr. Lacan. We got a few questions that come in, so we'll get started with those. First question is the Japanese boxwood likely to get the boxwood blight?
Good question. I think the answer is no, but I think it's worth looking at the actual list. To be quite honest, I'm not sure offhand. But again, a lot of info on this from I think University of Virginia or someplace like that, and that info is still good.
All right. Next question. In general, with any wood that is or may be infested, does chipping and using the chips on site an okay way, or will the pest or pathogen remain active in the chips?
That's a very good question and very difficult to answer. In very, very general terms, chipping seems to be deadly to pretty much everything that's ever been tried. I'm sure there are exceptions out there, but you know, chipping seems to be a pretty lethal treatment for just about all insects that it's been tried on, and most diseases, in the sense that not that chipping itself kills the pathogen, but it exposes the wood to other things, namely fungi, that then go in and eat both the wood and the pathogen. There are some exceptions, and the exceptions mostly have to do with palms. So some of the palm diseases seem to persist a bit better in palm material. So it's another one of those where I would refer you specifically to the IPM website. So it's ipm.ucanr.edu. And if you look for that specific disease or pest, it'll almost certainly have the information about chipping. And if you have a specific question, let me know. But again, in sort of very, very broad terms, chipping seems to be a pretty safe practice. When it comes to things like insects and even some diseases, even if the chipping doesn't kill the pathogen entirely, you're not really spreading it, right? If you leave the chips on site, well, that insect or that pathogen is already on site. So you're not really doing any damage in that sense. I don't know if that makes complete sense, but that's for example what we say about sudden oak death and things like that. But yeah, if you have a specific question, I'm happy to look that up. Again, aside from palms, I can't think of something that's efficiently spread by chips. Let's put it that way.
All right. Next question is, where can we find the video of the South American weevil that Dr. Lacan mentioned?
Oh, absolutely. On the UC Riverside's website. So if you look for South American palm weevil, it'll come right up. And it's the UC Riverside website with Dr. Mark Hoddle. And he's got the flight mill video on there. So yes, definitely visit that. If you just put in South American palm weevil flight mill, it'll come up.
All right, next question. Which of these pests or pathogens are not controlled or suppressed by good cultural conditions?
Well, that's a tricky question, but most of them are not necessarily controlled or suppressed. It really sort of depends on your situation. So something like a walnut twig beetle, once your walnut's infected, I don't know that good cultural conditions are really going to be enough to control it. Same thing with Phytophthora. Once you have it, yeah, certainly cultural options are critical to preventing infestation. In some cases, probably for that plum bud gall mite, the cutting off of those infested branches, that may be enough. The thing might not spread very well. You know, some of the other examples, the South American palm weevil, if you can just remove the palm and chip the palm, yeah, that's certainly going to control it, but you've lost the palm. So cultural methods are really, for the examples that I've given, cultural methods are critical in trying to suppress the transmission of the pest. But for something like a Asian citrus psyllid, it's kind of interesting. The citrus larvae, the psyllid larvae, need new foliage. So actually, with more pruning of citrus, you get more psyllid because there's more soft foliage for those psyllid larvae to feed on. They can't really feed on hard, old leaves. Adults can, so that's how adults persist. So cultural practice is super important, but unfortunately they do have limits in many cases.
Okay. And let's see, it looks like the next one is more of a statement. Saunders Brothers in Virginia has a nice booklet on the boxwoods and resistance. There's also a new boxwood that has been introduced called New Gen.
Beautiful. Wonderful.
Let's see, the next question is, please again tell us what to do to get arborist CEUs. So that if you should have been able to register your ISA certification number upon registration. If you don't remember if you did or not, you can type it into the chat box and then we'll pull that list and submit it to ISA. And that looks like it is it for questions. We can wait for a few more seconds to see if any trickle in. So we got one more boxwood question. Is boxwood blight hitting the native ones in the UK?
You know, I honestly don't know. If it's a Buxus genus, yeah, I would imagine that it's susceptible. I'm not sure what the distribution is across Europe, to be quite blunt. So that's an interesting question, yeah.
I don't know either, but I would assume it would be susceptible as well.
All right, that looks like it is it for questions.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for being here with us. Thank you, Dr. Lacan, for sitting in on this with us. We really enjoyed having you.
Yeah, sure. My pleasure.
Thanks everyone for joining. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.